is Valerie. I've got the usual QR code. I found out about it this morning because I don't read my emails. So it's there, and it's on the last slide as well for the feedback. My name's Valerie. I'm a collaboration coach, and today I'm going to share with you my loop that I named after myself because I'm trying to be, confident. I created a loop. It's a leadership loop. I'm going to tell you how it can help you take positive action when you might be feeling a little bit stuck and bring some new things into your awareness when you're dealing with complexity and uncertainty. What you're going to learn about today. I'm going to give some context around some of the anti-patterns that we see and why our brains don't help us to turn those into helpful patterns. I'll give my views on how agility can help, and I'll give you the model to help and guide you. I'm going to tell a story. I made it up. You might recognize some things in it. It is based on patterns. It takes a lot of inspiration from real events, but it is fictional, completely fictional. So I'm going to transport us back to the 1920s, and I want you to imagine that we're all working in a factory in America, and we're all from different countries from across the world. So we don't have a common language. We can't speak to each other. We can't communicate with each other. But that doesn't actually matter, because for my part, I know what I'm getting from over here. I know what I'm going to do with it. And I know what I'm going to push off to the next person, because it's repeatable and predictable. And every time all of us does our part in the process, we make a piece of the car. They all get put together, and we always make the same car. Repeatable, predictable. Burns, then sells the cars, makes money, rinse and repeat. Over the decades, I drew all these myself, by the way. Very proud of myself. Over the years, Burns has a lot of success working in this way, and I call that command and control. So head office does the design and the specs, decides what everyone needs to do, gives the instructions to the people in the factories. The people in the factories buy the cars. No, they don't. They make the cars. The consumer base buys the cars. Company successful. Tick, tick, tick. Decades, markets, countries, all over the place. We are so successful. If we fast forward now a few decades. Electric cars. We've never done this before. We're used to internal combustion engine cars. But we're okay. We know how to make cars. We've got a really loyal customer base. So we're going to, think about this. We're about 5 years into our thinking and researching and planning our electric car. We hope to have the car into the world 2 years ago. It's not there yet. But it will be in the world in 6 months. Promise it will be in the world in 6 months. Whilst we are procrastinating, did I say that? Whilst we are doing our process really well, these people come into the world. X, brand new car company. Nobody's laughing. It's not really Tesla, but it is. X comes into the world. They have never made a car before, ever. And they put an electric car into the world. And it's pretty good. People want this car. People are buying this car. But Burns aren't concerned. Oh, no. We've been making cars for decades. We're the market leader across the world. Our car will do great. But we tighten our control. We just, we have to make sure it's perfect. So we just do a little bit more of all the things that have given us success in the past. So we get our car into the world. How do you think that went? Oh dear, catastrophic failure. So people don't want to buy our electric car. And the people that do hate it. They really hate it. And we're thinking, well, that didn't work. So back in head office, they're going, well, what's happened? What's happened? We don't understand. We know how to make cars. We have a loyal customer base. They should be lapping up our electric car. We really spent a long time on this car. So they're asking, have our people lost their touch? Or they're asking, is there someone trying to sabotage us? Or have the consumers simply been brainwashed? And that's plausible, isn't it? But none of that is true, of course, because Burns were doing exactly what they knew how to do and what had made them so successful over the past few decades. They had done, as I described, that command and control approach. In head office, they'd made all the designs, all the specs, exactly the same this time, sent it to the factories. Took a bit longer than they hoped, but they tightened the control just to make sure. And this happened. But the reason that they haven't done anything wrong is because they've never known that they're doing anything wrong. Because anytime they've released a car into the world before and it's been more successful than they hoped for, that's validation that they're doing the right thing. And anytime they've released a car into the world before and it's been less successful than they hoped for, never this catastrophic, that's been, we didn't do our process well enough, so we need to tighten control on our process. So they've never realized that they needed to change. And that's because, well, it's maybe not because, but it's simply not that simple anymore. The world is not that simple anymore. It's not repeatable and predictable anymore. And this is a pattern. I don't know if any of you would recognize that kind of feeling when you're unchallenged in your work. You're unchallenged in your market. Don't like to use the word complacent, but it's probably complacency. And then a threat happens, a challenge comes in. And we often actually do the opposite of what we should be doing in that moment. And we end up with results that are not what we were hoping for. So Burns are going to try and sort this out. I want you to meet Mel. Mel's a collaboration coach. Mel's awesome. She's read all these books. She has watched all these videos, listened to all these podcasts. And guess who else has? I have. This is my list of references. So if you want to know what's behind all of this that I'm telling you, you'll find it in there. As well as as Mel, I need to introduce you to Henry. Henry is a Burns employee. He's been at Burns for 15 years. And he's been given the unenviable task of leading the second electric car project. So Mel and Henry get together with those in the boardroom. And they discuss what they're going to do. And Mel has a few things to say to them. She starts with this, Gary Hamel. Right now, your company has 21st century internet-enabled business processes, mid-20th century management processes, all built atop 19th century management principles. Now, this is very true for Burns, but it's probably true for a lot of people in this room. We are not all working for companies which were founded in the 19th century. Of course, we're not. But all these things, these principles, these processes, all the history of management influences everything that happens in our organizations today. So all of that is at play. Doesn't matter when your company was founded. Now, the newer companies have less of this in their history, so that could account for why they are sometimes more successful. But we all have this in our history and in our influence. And it's not only that. Nearly 70% of executives agree that their industry will change more in the next 5 years than it did in the previous 50. So there's growing acknowledgement that the world is changing, and the world is changing at pace. If we think about the automotive industry on its own, we can't predict with any accuracy what fuel cars will use in 10 years' time. We probably all think well, that's obvious, it's going to be electricity, but is it? There's so many problems with electric cars and the infrastructure that goes around them. We maybe don't have the alternative yet, but how long is it going to be before we have the alternative? We don't know. We can't predict it. There's rapid changes happening. Most of those changes are happening out with our control, whatever industry we work in. My favorite is AI. Okay, so I see all these articles and all these clickbaits and talks in conferences. How AI will affect your business in 5 years' time. Really? You can tell me that. That's really very impressive. Because nobody knows how AI is going to affect us tomorrow, never mind 5 years' time. So we need to start thinking about what is not predictable, and we need to start taking new approaches for those things. I know that the opening keynote yesterday explored some of those things. And the reason for that is because we live in complex adaptive systems. Some of you will have heard that term before. Complex adaptive systems mean that if you change something over here, lots of things change. Lots of completely, seemingly unrelated things change. You cannot predict what's going to happen. It's like a domino effect, but it's not a line of dominoes. It's like random dominoes in different parts of the world, all toppling because this one has. That's what a complex adaptive system is. That's what we're living in right now. That's what we're operating in. If we think back to the 1920s, life was simpler. Complexity was still there, but it was much less noticeable. Lots of things were repeatable with predictable outcomes. And that's why the management processes and principles were created around the Industrial Revolution. Nobody back then could have predicted the limitations of mass production because we didn't know what was going to happen. We thought we could just live like this forever. And Burns, as it was changing over the years, it did change, they did make different cars, but lots of other car companies were changing over the years as well. Consumers started to have choices. There's comfort options, entertainment options in your cars, and most of these new additions to our cars included software and electronics, and suddenly the car itself became more complex. Now we have autonomous vehicles, driverless buses. There's nothing unpredictable about that. Yeah, quite the opposite. And manufacturers themselves, they've got more choice. They've got choice about where to get their raw materials. And if we think back to the 1970s, the Japanese car industry completely changed the relationship between quality and price. So before that point, you couldn't buy a quality car for a cheap price. And then the Japanese revolutionized that. And suddenly you could buy a really good quality car for a much lower price than you could before. And we've all seen ad campaigns that completely change markets. Can anyone think of one?
Coca-Cola?
Sorry?
Coca-Cola?
Coca-Cola, yeah. Changed the soft drinks market. There are so many examples of ad campaigns and marketing decisions that have just changed the whole. It's not in your control as one of their competitors or as somebody else operating in that field. Things change without you being able to predict it. And it's not just even that. So we've talked about marketing, we've talked about supply chains, we've talked about products. And often we talk about making products in the software industry too, but our products are not just products, they're part of services. So we have to see the bigger picture. We have to see how our product fits into the service, and then we have to think about how that service is given to the consumers. Consumers have so many choices that if you don't give them what they want, which is normally attention now, then they're going to go somewhere else. So there are so many variables happening in the world now. It's not going to get any easier to operate within the world. So Burns was standing still, relatively speaking, and quite successfully standing still. But the world has been changing. And eventually, the bubble that burns is going to pop if they don't do something about it. Because it's simply not that simple. Humans are unpredictable. Humans have access to a lot more stuff now than they used to. And there are still things in the world that have definitive outcomes. So if I do this, then I know that this will happen. There are things like that. But everything else, we need to take a different approach on. What I call command and control. What you might have experienced something similar doesn't work in these situations. So what are Henry and Mel going to do about that? What's Burns going to do about that? Mel says to Henry, do you think you're a leader? Now, Henry's answer to this question isn't actually important. I really want to know how many of you think you're leaders. Could you raise your hand if you think you're a leader? Okay, we have like maybe half, maybe just less than half of this room. I'm going to share a little secret with you. This is my definition of leaders. It's from Francis Briers. A leader is someone who influences others to take effective action. So that means anyone can be a leader. Anyone in this room, any of your peers, any of your managers, anyone in your team, Henry, Mel, any of their teammates as well. You can all be leaders. And I think people think that they're not leaders because they don't know the answers. I see a nod. I also think some people think they're not leaders because they don't have permission to lead. They feel like they need permission. See more nods. But the truth is, unless something is repeatable and predictable, you can't have the answers. So leading becomes much easier when we realize that a lot of the time there aren't actually any right answers. And you can let that go and you can be vulnerable with that and say, I don't know the answer, but I reckon if we work together, we could probably work it out. When we apply agility to leadership, that's a superpower. So agility and leadership, do you like my superhero? It's so much fun drawing these slides. Taking short, fast action, changing plans based on what we know now, creating hypotheses about what we might learn next, celebrating anything we find out, good or bad, and empathy and kindness towards others. I get a lot of questions about empathy and kindness towards others, but I believe it's central to this, and I will explain why. All of this is best done with others, not in competition with others, and certainly not on your own. Leaders have the power to create incredible spaces that allow innovation to thrive. We all have that power. So how do we use that power? How do we get the best from ourselves and from those around us? Well, we need to set some conditions. So that vulnerability of realizing that there isn't an answer and realizing that only by working together can we solve the problem really helps. Superordinate goals. Who's heard of a superordinate goal? People who have seen my talk before. Superordinate goal is something that raises everybody above their agenda. I've worked with so many multifunctional teams, and everybody comes in with their own, but my way's better. No, my way, no, we should do it this way. No, we should do it that way. No, my way's better. Oh, do you know what? I don't even care. I have so many. A superordinate goal rises all of us to a bigger meaning. So it can take away all of our agendas and make us focus on the thing that we're actually there to do. Super powerful. I learned it from Amy Edmondson, the queen of psychological safety. Yeah, love it. Lots of people have come over to me and said that they had these during the pandemic. So they really felt the pull of something that was bigger than themselves during the pandemic when they had to respond to something really mad that was going on. But you can create them without chaos. You can. It's hard, but you can. What else? So team charter and values. This is something that we teach a lot in Agile spaces, and so many teams I come across don't have this. It's so, well, it's not simple, but it's so basic. We can do this. We can get people together to talk about a team charter, talk about how they want to be together, how they want to work together, what values they care about, what their goals are. We can do that. Equal voice. You can't have psychological safety without equal voice. That's about quietening the loud people and finding a way, whatever way that is, to have the voices of those that are quieter actually heard. There are loads of ways to do that, but you can't have psychological safety without that. And finally, having a team of leaders. If you influence somebody to take effective action, you are a leader by definition. We can all be leaders. We can be in a team of leaders. We can talk about what that means. That's important. If you don't do that, the rest of things going to fall apart. And then we get onto the loop. This is my loop. It has some hot off-the-press changes. So excuse me if I use wrong words. Implement used to be called connect up until this point. So this is new. This isn't even on the website yet. So you're getting some, pretty exciting stuff. Right, this here is a guide. It's meant to bring things that happen and ways that we can best deal with uncertainty into your consciousness, so that you can go, where am I? What is it that I need to do next? What's stopping me from doing the thing that I need to do? And it's meta and multi-level. It's a little bit confusing that way. It's a personal tool. So you'll probably find yourself going through it lots of times. We do it anyway. It's not anything new, this. But it happens at this level, personal level. It happens at project level. It happens at organizational level. Sometimes it'll go fast. Sometimes it'll go slow. They'll all be going on at the same time. I'm going to talk you through it so that we understand, hopefully. The most important thing about the loop is that you keep fostering that collaborative environment. That's the most important thing. And Caitlin, it is rather warm. Have we got any air? I can see people struggling as well. If we could get it cooler, that would be great. Okay, let's get stuck in. So consider is the first part that I'm going to tell you about. This is about thinking about what you already know and deciding whether you need to continue on in the loop. So thinking, where are we now and can we predict what's going to happen next? That's it. How long is it going to take? How are people going to react to it? Can we predict that? If not, you need to find those gaps in assumptions. What are you assuming about whatever situation you're in? And what gaps are there to your knowledge? Once you've found those, you can be curious about them. So go and find the people that you think are not being heard, whose voices aren't present, whose perspectives aren't there, and spread your reach and go and ask them some stuff. Be curious about those gaps and assumptions that you're making. And all of this prepares you for implementation. So I'm not trying to say that you will never have tried things when you're trying to explore a problem. Of course you will. You'll have done some experiments before this. But the essence of implement is basically agility. Short, fast experimentation, trying things with real users, getting the feedback, updating your plans based on what you know now, working together, working with your team, working with your stakeholders. And the environment that you created at the start will be super important once you get to this point. But the last bit of the loop is evolve. This is the bit that really matters for success. Because if you don't actually change anything, like you might have changed something by creating a new product, right? But you've not actually changed anything. You've not actually evolved. Think about Burns. We've not actually evolved anything within the organization if we don't change something else. So this is about being quite particular about the things that you're trying to achieve. And instead of working within the constraints of your organization that you're used to working within, try and change them. So we can't do that because the policies say we can't do that. We'll change the policy. That is possible, if you have some conversations with people. So it's hard, but it's possible. And all of that's underpinned by unlearning and relearning. So Barry O'Reilly tells us that learning is tough, but unlearning is harder. So we get stuck in believing that the things that helped us yesterday will also help us today. And we need to start noticing what's not working anymore and letting them go. And that's hard, but the more you do that, the better it'll get, and the better you'll get at doing that. And the more you'll be able to evolve through the loop. So Mel tells Henry all of this. And Henry's like, really? All of that? What do you expect me to do with all of that information? He's completely overwhelmed. He's been working at Burns for 15 years. He's never thought of anything like this before. This is totally mind-blowing. So he's feeling overwhelmed. But he can already see things that he might need to get curious about, or things that might need to change within his organization for him to be successful in this project. So Mel says to him, let's start with where we are now and see how we go. So Henry's off with his team. He's ready. They're doing a kick-off day or two. They're doing their kick-off. They're doing their team charter. They're doing their values. They're talking about being a team of leaders. They're creating their superordinate goal. Their superordinate goal is allow our vehicles of the future to be fit for these unprecedented times. They started to work pretty well together. They moved into figuring out what they know. They did a system visualization. They started looking at case studies to consider what it is that they know right now. They looked at their competitors and they looked at themselves. What do we know about this at the moment? What assumptions are they making? Can they predict what's going to happen next? They're doing all of these things. But Henry has people imposing solutions on it. He has people saying, you have to know this stuff already. You have to be, what are we doing? We need a plan. We need it now. And they're going to his team. And they're saying, what are you doing? What's happening? When is this happening? It has to happen now. Why is it not happening now? We're in a crisis. Do you not know we're in a crisis? Henry's feeling some mixed emotions, right? He's really trying to do his best, and this is just falling apart. He's feeling pushed and pulled. He's getting angry. He's not leading at his best. He's not doing all the things that he set out to do. And he talks to Mel, and he says, I can't do this. I'm failing already. My team hate me. The managers think that I'm useless. I can't. And she said, see that feeling? Connect to that feeling, then draw it. This is what he draws. And he says, on the inside, I'm absolutely terrified. I'm being pulled in all of these directions, and I feel really stretched thin. And on the outside, I think that I'm pretty spiky. I think I'm not being very nice to people, but I'm also definitely holding on to anything that's going to keep me safe. Mel says to him, this sounds like you're Bruno. And now, I know that we don't like to talk about Bruno. If you're an Encanto fan, you will know that. But I think that we should talk about Bruno. So Bruno is a part of you, and it's your brain's defense mechanism for keeping you safe. And in this case, it's keeping Henry safe from scary things like uncertainty and unpredictability. It's just trying to protect him. It's trying to keep him from that threat that it's feeling. Dan Siegel calls this flipping your lid. This is the hand-brain model. I'm not going to get into it right now, but if we have time at the end, I can tell you more about it. But when you sense a threat, you basically, this is your brain, and you flip. When we do that, and we all do that, we need to notice it. We need to feel it, sit with it, and accept it. Because there isn't actually anything we can do about this happening to us. But we can work out how we can return back to a calm state of mind. So we need to treat our Brunos with kindness. And everybody unconsciously has this safety mechanism in their brain. And everybody's Bruno is completely different. It feels different on the inside, it looks different to people on the outside, and it needs something different to help it be calm. So they all need something different. Everybody in this room would draw a different picture when they were asked to draw their Bruno. And they're going to see their Brunos quite a lot through the rest of this process because they're dealing with scary stuff. But there isn't a right way to do any of this. So Henry takes what he's learned about that and he goes back to his team and shares his Bruno with them. And then he asks them about their Brunos. And they all start to talk about things. And suddenly, they start to understand things that they've seen from each other. And they start to go, oh, see that day that you did that? Oh, I get it. Okay, what did you need then? And suddenly, there was this kind of understanding across the team of what each other was going through and how they could help each other better. And he also decided to share the loop with them. He decided to tell them what he was up to so that they could help each other to get from where they are and evolve something eventually. He thought if he brought it into their awareness too, then that might help them. So they decided as a team at this point that they were done with considering stuff. And they wanted to get curious. They got loads of questions. They want to find out some stuff. So they move into curiosity. And Mel says to Henry, what's your understanding of curiosity? And he says, well, I think it's about asking questions. I don't like asking questions because people think I don't know what I'm doing and they think I'm a troublemaker. So I kind of don't do that. So if that's what this is about, then I'm not sure I'm going to be up for that. And Mel says, that's a completely normal reaction. We are rewarded in society for asserting our views and providing answers to questions really quickly. So it's countercultural for us to be curious and to ask questions. But if we are curious and we ask good questions without bias, we free ourselves from judgment, we free ourselves from assumptions, and we free ourselves from speculation, which are all three things that get in the way when we're trying to do good stuff. And Henry says, I get it, I do, but that makes me feel really uncomfortable. Guess what? It's Bruno. And he says to Mel, is that my Bruno? And she's like, yes, it is your Bruno. It's keeping you safe from this scary thing about asking questions. And he went, all right, okay. So they move into curiosity, and the team figure out all the people that they want to talk to, all the gaps that they've got, all the assumptions they're making, and they go and speak to those people, and they're so excited about it. And the people that they're speaking to are absolutely loving being engaged for what feels like the first time ever, possibly is the first time ever. And they love it, but the results are confusing. Hence my roller coaster. Who was with me in Gemma's session earlier on? And we had a theme park, and I was like, I've drawn a roller coaster before. They thought they knew what people would say. They thought they knew what people wanted, but they didn't. They didn't even know whether this car was going to be electricity or not. They just didn't know what was going on. And Henry felt like he was losing control. He was under pressure to just do it, make the solution, go, save the company, Henry. And he's not feeling great about that. Feels confused, wants to stop. Guess who's here? Bruno. Bruno's here. Everybody's Bruno's here. Nobody has any idea what to do. But they go back to their solid foundations. They go back to their team charter. They think about why they're here, look at the superordinate goal and go, we can, we will, we can. And when he talks to Mel again, she says to him, well, this is really hard, so this is okay. But creating and nurturing those foundations will absolutely help you to get through the next little while. And she asked him, do the team feel that they understand enough now about the problem to start trying some things for real with real people? And of course they said yes. So again, this might sound obvious, but sometimes we get stuck in analysis paralysis, or sometimes we're too scared to try. So we don't. We just stay in that, like, oh, let's just keep learning some more and, keep learning some more and learn some more. Everything up to this point has helped us understand what we're trying to solve. And now we have to do something about it. And again, you've probably got multiple loops going on at the same time. So you've got people that have already started evolving as they've been going through this process. This is about breaking it down, getting those feedback loops set up, keeping talking, and keeping working together. So they do that. They know exactly where they want to start, which is easy. They use some design thinking tools to create some hypotheses. And they work closely with each other as they go through their experiments. They're working with stakeholders, discussing results, and they're improving working together. It's agility in action, as we would understand it. They got some short, fast experiments, learning loads, failing loads, getting frustrated loads, but they're letting it settle and they're moving on. They're making progress. The only problem is the progress is not just about a car. It's about the whole system and the way that Burns operates. And there's a few problems with that. I love this. The only thing agility is guaranteed to deliver 100% of the time is impediments. I can hear laughs. This was no exception. So Burns had, or Henry and his team had impediments like this. The software delivery is too slow. The budget structures are in the way. Policies are unsuitable. We don't have the expertise that we need. And of course, it's not just the car. Yeah, we want to change a lot here. Then we can be reminded that impediments are not in the path. Impediments are the path. So that comes back to those constraints that I was talking about earlier. We're used to working within the constraints that our organizations put in front of us, or beside us, or in front, like here. You must not pass. But we have to go towards them, because that's the way to success. And that's where evolve comes from. That's what it takes to close the loop. So you might have to reach out to other parts of your organization. You might have to have other teams unlearn stuff, relearn stuff. You'll have multiple loops going on all at the same time. But evolve isn't about removing a policy. It's about working with the teams that policy affects and finding a way forward that is useful for everyone. It's not about you, it's about everyone. Sometimes all you need to do is a little tweak. So it's just a tweak to a policy, a tweak to a relationship, just something that's going to make it different than what it was before. That's all. That's all you need to do, but you need to do it purposefully. And when you get back round and you're considering again, it might be that you can now take a more informed approach. It might be that there are more predictable and repeatable things than you realized, or it might be that you're actually trying to solve the wrong problem. And that's okay. As long as you've done something, you're going to learn, and then you can start again. So Henry and his team delivered a success. Yay! It wasn't just the car. It was the beginnings of a system that could completely change the way that Burns operates in the future. They worked together. Oh, there's the system. And there's the managers. They worked together with management. And they worked together with other teams in the organization. They built that fundamentals of the collaborative environment with the rest of the organization. They brought in those other teams. They kept removing each other's impediments. This was all going on all at the same time, some fast, some slow. And they slowly made it better. It's not perfect, but they're creating a culture that's full of empathy, curiosity, and connection when they didn't have it before. So that's the loop. That's been my life's work for the last couple of years. Multi-level, meta, happens anyway in our brains, but it's good to bring it to our awareness because you might be sitting looking at this now, and I know I started at Consider with Henry, but perhaps you're in a place where actually you need to evolve, and you can just think a little bit differently, bring it into your consciousness and go, hang on, this is going to help me, I hope. It's helped me a lot. I feel like I use it all the time. I feel like I use it every day. It's just this. The first time I did this talk, I said, I'm about to explain to you the inside of my head. The talk was nothing like this, but this is how my brain works, so I hope it's useful for you. It helps me take stock, it helps me check in with myself, but also with the teams I'm working with and helping them to get somewhere, make progress, make positive changes towards something new. I use it when I'm making workshops, when I'm facing a sticky situation, big things, small things, all the time. But the truth is that we live in unprecedented times, and that's not about to slow down. We have to be okay with that. And it can take years or decades to get rid of controlling bureaucracy. So it's not about massive change programs, it's about tweaks, evolutions. We're never done improving, but we are still humans. And I believe that, especially in the age of AI, human connection is going to be so much more important than anything else. Especially as well in the age of remote and hybrid working. We need to connect with others. We're not going to solve our problems if we don't do that. So I'd invite you to figure out your Bruno, and I'd invite you to ask your team to figure out their Bruno too. Treat them with awareness, acceptance, kindness, and reflect on what they need. Be bold, lead with intent, celebrate not knowing, find ways to discover more, don't wait for permission, because it's just simply not that simple anymore. That's all I have to say today. I have hundreds, let me tell you about this, hundreds of QR codes, it feels. This is the feedback one, which I added this morning. This one here is for my LinkedIn. So if you want to talk more, then connect with me. And I love talking, so I will always chat. And my email address, and then this one is to get onto my website to look at the loop. The loop on the website is different because I haven't updated it yet, but it's pretty much the same thing. Thank you so much.